that moves. enca.com.
In this week's episode, he was once an apartheid foot soldier. What made him change? From childhood, he was indoctrinated and made to believe black people were inferior human beings. And when Lourens Groenewald became a policeman in the 1970s, he didn't think twice about pulling the trigger. But through a series of traumatic events, Lourens found himself extremely desperate, and only then he understood the true meaning of humanity.
I was in Roodepoort, the 1976 Soweto riots broke out, and it was the afternoon. I was on my way home, and my wife then was waiting for me in a car outside, and when I reached the car, I was told by the lieutenant in charge, listen, Greens, we've got to go. I was here with about 30 other guys, and we had no communications except with radio comms to the outside world because all the wires, all the telephone cables, everything was cut.
A troublesome teenager in the small town of Sasolburg.
I was extremely rebellious. I did not condone to authority. I did not submit to authority. I didn't like authority.
Ironically, Lourens Groenewald ended up being the authority he hated so much. Straight from high school, he joined the police force in the early 1970s.
I was posted as a student constable to the radio control center on the West Rand, and it had to do with my voice. They were quite impressed with my voice. It's one of the few assets I have. And then I went to police college where I did a training. I was involved in a training of about 6 months, and then I was posted out to Hillbrow.
It was at the height of apartheid. South Africa was under an oppressive regime, and Lourens was committed to keeping things that way.
We were brought up to look down in contempt on blacks. I was a full-blooded racist. I believed, as all the other whites, that we were God's gift to humankind here in Africa.
Life in Hillbrow was great for the young policeman. Elsewhere in the country, trouble was brewing. Children in Soweto hated learning subjects in Afrikaans and agitated for change. On the 16th of June 1976, learners took their rage to the streets. Lourens was at the forefront of the battle.
I remember I shot 3 guys and I wounded them, and I let them climb over that fence in the background of the police station. I let them climb over that, and I took them to the charge office, the police charge office, where they, and I am so ashamed to say, black members of the force were so brainwashed by the police and the government of those days, they fought with us against their own brothers and fathers and people.
As the police drove out of Soweto later that day, they left behind hundreds of people in hospitals and dozens of bodies. Lourens was never the same again. The violence had devastating psychological effects on him.
It turned me into an alcoholic like most of us. I went into alcohol and drug rehab 6 times in my life because of what happened here. And the world does not know that many of my buddies committed suicide in years later on, which could be traced right back to the 76 Soweto riots, of what we had to do, and we had to live with it.
The stress got too much for the troubled officer. In December 1990, he left the police force and worked for various companies. He then used his law enforcement experience to start a security business. But with each day, the drinking escalated to a new level.
I'll never forget how it was waking up at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, shaking like a leaf, and then pouring myself 2, 3, 4 shots of vodka and water.
Hitting the bottle non-stop, Lourens finally cracked in 2001. After years of boozing, there was no law and order in Lourens Groenewald's life. First, his family abandoned him, and then he lost everything, including his house. There was only one place he could end up: the streets of Johannesburg. After the break, Lourens Groenewald's journey to self-discovery. We also show you how he received help from the same people he hated passionately.
News that moves. ENCA.com.